Hi guys, today we are going to talk about Spy Team Fortress 2 weapon when he turned into Female Typical Colors 2 weapon. To start us off, we have the Ambassador. Its main gimmick is that it can headshot, though crit damage falls off with range. It also deals 15% less damage and fires 20% slower. Although the falloff feels a bit harsh, if you treat it less like a sniper rifle and more like an actual revolver, it works very well as a skillful ranged pick tool. I'm not even good with this weapon and I still find it satisfying to use. Then TC2 decided it needed a rework, so here we are. Now the Ambassador only crits if your clip is full, so any shot past the first is going to be normal. They also swapped the firing speed penalty for a reload speed penalty, added 40% more fall off, and made it so that your headshots just turn into mini crits past 75 studs. For comparison, here's how the crit scaling works for both games. While that's running, let me explain a little something. In TC2, all revolvers reload 50% slower than TF2s. Normally, that's not a huge problem, but you know which weapon in TC2 needs constant reloading? The Ambassador. And you know how long it takes to reload? 2.64 seconds in TC2, more than double compared to TF2's 1.13. I appreciate the consistency of the mini crits, but the way headshots work makes the weapon way more punishing than it has any right to be. Waiting almost 3 seconds just to headshot again on a weapon that's already tough to aim is baffling to me. Is it functional? I mean, sure. Is it a good change? I don't think so. Next up is Spy's most underwhelming revolver, the Enforcer. Very simple weapon. For the downside of firing 20% slower, it deals 20% more damage while disguised and pierces damage resistances. But since your disguise breaks the moment you fire, it's basically a 20% damage bonus on a disguise cooldown. These bonuses give you a fighting chance against the Vaccinator and also lets you 2-tap light classes as long as you're sniffing their asses. It's pretty mid. So how does TC2 make it more interesting? Mostly quality of life buffs. That 20% bonus while disguised is now mini crits while disguised, letting you 2-tap at a safer distance. Though not across the map, since the weapon has hidden mini crit fall off. For comparison, here's how the damage scales between both games. It also deals full damage to sapped sentries, which normally have a 33% resistance to revolvers. And one more note, while disguised you take 20% more damage, though that doesn't actually change anything from TF2's version. More onto that later, just take my word for it right now. The Enforcer is still focused on 2-tapping light classes and cutting through resistances, but it's better at both now. Honestly, I'd argue this makes it about as good as stock. On to watches. Surprisingly, only one got changed, and unsurprisingly, it's the Dead Ringer. Here's how the weapon works. With a full cloak meter, taking damage drops a fake corpse and makes you invisible. The first hit gives a 75% damage resistance. Then for 3 seconds after that, you get a 65% damage resistance, a speed boost, flicker immunity, and afterburn immunity. After that, it goes back to the normal 20% cloak resistance. The watch also recharges 50% faster and lasts 40% longer, but you instantly lose 50% cloak when feigning death. In practice, that means 7 seconds of cloak and a 20-second recharge. And unfortunately, ammo packs and dispensers cannot speed this timer up. So, why do people find this weapon annoying? Put quite simply, the speed boost coupled with the damage resistance lets Spy escape fights very easily with little to no punishment. Not overpowered, just pretty frustrating to play against. TC2 makes a few tweaks here and there. The 75% damage resistance upon activation is lowered to 70%, and the 65% damage resistance for the first 3 seconds is now 60%, but lasts the entire cloak duration now. The speed boost only works if you're under 25% health, and all the other bonuses such as afterburn immunity are gone too. And while the regen rate is listed as 34%, it still seems to recharge in the same time as TF2's. No idea why. Effectively, the Dead Ringer in TC2 does not have a speed boost, which makes this weapon much fairer to play against. Instead of instantly escaping halfway across the map, you actually need to be smart about your cloaked movement to get away, and that persisting damage resistance really helps with that. Overall, a pretty solid change actually. The disguise kit in TF2 isn't very hard to understand. You can disguise as whatever class, swap to whatever weapon, and kind of reload. It's a bit complicated, but you can if you know how. I'm not going to get into it here. The only obvious way to get caught is if you have a debuff applied to you, such as Afterburn or Girardi. Yeah, it's a bit plain, but it can get the job done in the right circumstances. Alongside a technology upgrade, TC2's Disguise Kit also gets some stat upgrades. Kind of. You can now reload manually with a dedicated button, and disguising gives a 20% damage resistance that actually stacks with your invis watches. But there's also nerfs for some reason. Even while disguised, you will flinch and let out loud grunts if damaged, and you can't switch your disguised weapon. And this is not the TC2 team's fault, but disguises don't actually copy unusuals over, making it even easier to spot a spy. Fake reloading is neat for selling your act mid-fight, but people catch on fast, especially when you're always holding out the same weapon and still give off both audio and visual cues when damaged. The 20% resistance does help offset health penalties on Spy's knives, such as the Big Earner, but it's not a huge help otherwise. All in all, disguises actually feel weaker now, which is certainly an achievement. Not a good one, though. Knives in TF2 are simple. Hit someone's back, they instantly die. The back is defined as the rear 180 degrees of their model, which also allows you to sidestab people from weirder angles. But because of this wide radius, you get face stabs, where lag or high latency make it look like you were stabbed from the front. Face stabs are a big issue in TF2, so let's see how TC2 handles it. And, well, let's just say they tried. Side stabs have been changed to deal mini crits, which range in damage depending on how close you are to the back. These can deal up to 99% of the target's health to the base 40 damage of the knife, and is indicated by a very slight change in how your character holds their knife. Here's how it looks in game. There are a couple reasons that this idea just doesn't work. Maybe it's Roblox, but since hitboxes lag behind, stabs still feel frustrating for both parties involved. If you land a stab, the victim often sees it as a face stab. If you miss, chances are the hitbox lagged and it registers as a side stab instead. Which leads us to another issue with side stabs. Spy relies heavily on instantly killing his opponent. Most knives will have an on-kill effect that lets him chain stab or escape, which involves actually killing your enemy first. But with side stabs, the animation difference is so small that you cannot tell in the heat of a battle whether it'll be a backstab or not. And if you get a side stab, well, screw you, I guess. The end result is that most of Spy's deaths in TC2 feel undeserved. Whether that's Roblox's fault or whatever, Spy just doesn't feel good to play right now. Now on to one of Spy's most infamous knives, the Conniver's Kunai. On Backstab, you clear all debuffs and steal your victim's health from a minimum of 75 to a max of 210. The trade-off? You start with only 70 health. Now, normally, if a spy gets caught after a backstab, they're probably dead. but it's kind of hard to kill a spy who escapes with a million health after half your team generously decides to donate their backs to him every time you get him to low health. Yeah, this weapon's not very fun to play against. TC2 tones down the kunai considerably by making it less extreme on both ends. Instead of stealing 75 to 210 health, you only steal 25 to 75, and each successive backstab gives you even less. On the plus side, your starting health penalty is reduced as you spawn with 100 health instead of 70. These changes kind of let you live more after a backstab, but also kind of makes you more at risk. So, a lot more toned down. Overall, I think it's fair to play with and against, and it feels more like a slightly better knife rather than a straight upgrade. So, good change. Next up is one of my favorite spy knives, the Your Eternal Reward. On backstab, the victim makes no noise, doesn't show up in the kill feed, and you instantly disguises them. Unless someone's watching very closely, they won't even notice you got a backstab. The trade-off is that your cloak drains 33% faster, and disguising normally empties your cloak. It's a knife that will punish you for not being smart about disguises and does require the enemy team to not be paying attention. But in the right moments, it feels so good. In TC2, the cloak drain is replaced with a slower decloak speed, which is much better since it's about being smart with where you decloak instead of struggling to just maneuver around the map. The bigger change is the fact that disguises now give buffs. If you disguise as Scout, Soldier, or Pyro, you get a 20% damage bonus. If you disguise as Heavy, Demoman, or Engineer, you get a 20% damage resistance. If you disguise as Medic, Sniper, or Spy, you get 4 health regenerated every second. These bonuses make Spy a bit more versatile with the year, which was already decent to begin with. Additionally, the fact that most of these bonuses aid you in whatever position you're disguising as, such as Heavy being slow, so more likely to take damage, or Sniper being in the back lines, being more susceptible to chip damage, is really cool. So, overall, a small but appreciated buff. And alas, the last weapon, the Spicicle. Upon contact with fire, it gives the user a full second of fire damage immunity and 10 seconds of afterburn immunity. During this process, the weapon will melt, needing 15 seconds to recharge. This timer can be sped up with ammo packs though, and if the kill feed wasn't enough, your victims will also turn into ice statues upon backstab. This thing only exists to piss pyros off, and it does that pretty well. You can either run away with the help of the afterburn immunity, or quickly gun them down with the damage immunity. But the melt mechanic keeps this weapon in check, as you lose your main function of backstabbing people, as the backstab class. If you're using this to counter a pyro, be prepared to wait a long ass time until you can do your job again. So, what those typical colors do to make this weapon fair while also keeping it fun to use? Take a good guess. The answer is that they made it boring as hell, both in name and stats. Rather than melting and providing buffs, the Icicle, you couldn't have come up with a better name, just gives the user a 50% fire damage resistance and full afterburn immunity on wearer. And instead of melting, the weapon just gives you a flat 20 max health penalty. You will always have fireproof disguises and invisibility without needing to wait 15 seconds. A 50% fire damage resistance puts you at about the same health as a pyro, letting you gun them down before they can kill you. So, yeah, while it is more consistent and thus less annoying to use than TF2's, you remove this weapon's main gimmick. Rather than being dynamic, it just feels like a slightly worse stock knife unless you're fighting pyros. It is a change, even if it's a really lame one. And that's everything. Every single weapon changed from TF2 to TC2. And yeah, I know I've dragged this series on for like 2 years, so a lot of things have changed. I may or may not make a follow up video, Depends on how busy I am, but it's finally ended. Freaking finally. So, huge thank you to everyone who's stuck around for this long, and huge thank you to Samdaman and Vaco for helping to this day. And yeah, that's everything I have to say. Bye.